Hello there. My name is Matt, and if I had to pick one word to describe myself in general, it would be amateur. Like, I'm an amateur at most things. The kind of guy who gets bored really quickly. So that translates into me picking up a new hobby, like spending way too much money because I'm obsessed with it for like a month tops, and then finding something else. One thing that has always persisted a little teensy bit more in my life, and that's astronomy, space really. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. Star Trek and Star Wars are both great, but if I have to pick a side, it's obviously Trek because it's just a little bit more extensive. I've always believed that looking up to the stars is never a waste of time. It just adds this perspective to life. Check out Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot if you aren't quite sure what I'm rambling about. The first telescope I remember having was a small plastic one that my parents gave me, probably for Christmas or my birthday. I was maybe 11. And my friend and I, we set it up in my backyard on a clear night, and I was so stoked for all the things that we were going to see, or the things that I thought we were going to see. You know, the planets, the galaxies around us, all sorts of cool stuff. We finally got it focused on a star, and as I got down to the eyepiece, I thought it was broken. That fuzzy little orb of light in the sky, you know, when I got down there and looked at it, was basically just a slightly larger fuzzy orb of light in the sky, and I was a little disheartened, to be honest. My friend, who was much more intelligent than me, especially for our age, he laughed a bit because he knew what to expect, but I didn't. It wasn't until years later, for my 23rd birthday, that my partner at the time ordered me a telescope from Orion. Now, I guess I had mentioned it in passing at some time before that and he remembered, but it was the perfect gift. It ignited this whole thing. Now sadly, the one that he ordered was significantly delayed, and me being the, impatient, easily bored guy that I am, he knew he offered for us to go to a local telescope shop and pick one out from there instead. Walking in, I was amazed. There's so many different kinds, huge ones that cost thousands of dollars on crazy computer-controlled mounts, everything you could possibly think of. And all of that amazement quickly turned into being this overwhelmed feeling when that shopkeeper asked me what I wanted. I had absolutely no clue. Now, after establishing our price range, he showed me a few options, and I settled on a 500mm 5-inch reflector from Orion, from Skywatcher. And it was on an equatorial mount. It was a great deal, and that equatorial mount made it look really fancy, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna totally be able to see a ton of stuff with that. But again, after getting it home, that amazement and that excitement transformed into this overwhelmed emotion, I have no idea how to use this thing. So I knew I didn't know how to use it, but I was going to figure it out. I started to research, how do I use an equatorial mount? And I came across these words. I'd heard them, but I didn't really understand what they meant. Right ascension, declination, polar alignment. I knew what latitude was, I knew what altitude was, but these were terms that I'd never really considered being a part of astronomy because I didn't know anything. And I don't know why, but a lot of that information, as I spent, the next 6 months sort of digging into it on my off time, it just really didn't sink in. I had a lot of trouble putting it into practice, and I ended up just unlocking the loosening of the locking screws and pointing it towards objects like the moon. One night, my friends and I loaded it up, and we drove out to a secret location we frequented at the time. I locked the telescope onto the moon, and for the first time, I saw craters, in detail. It was beautiful, contrasted against a super dark sky. And it blew my mind. It quickly confirmed my love for space, for astronomy, and for sharing this love with others. I tried to line up the light coming out of the eyepiece with my iPhone camera so that I could share that incredible sight with my friends and my family, which later turned out to be an incredibly difficult task. But I got a sliver, of the eyepiece view into the camera lens, and I was able to get a picture, and it was good enough. I'll show you here. Fast forward a couple years, and I've moved to Vancouver, then back to Ontario, and I haven't spent a ton of time exploring space, but I've passively continued researching, and I've learned a little bit more. I decided that I might enjoy astronomy more if I had a telescope that was easier to use. So I went on the local buy and sell, and I found this Celestron Nexstar for $80. It was not too bad at all, but it was computerized. I still had no idea how to properly align it, but just being able to navigate the night sky with a hand controller changed the game for me. Since then, I've been able to show my friends amazing views of the moon, Jupiter, its 4 Galilean moons, and a bunch of other stuff. And it didn't take me long to realize that I should try connecting a quality camera to this thing to see what kind of photos I could get. Now, I had heard about astrophotography and I'd seen some of the stunning images that people put up, but after borrowing a DSLR from my sister, I ordered the necessary components to attach it to my Scout telescope. I was again disheartened and discovered that for whatever reason, I couldn't get anything to focus. Now, I now know that this is likely related to the point of prime focus in the telescope itself, just not being able to hit the sensor on my camera, but back then it was just frustrating. I tried, after that, just cutting the telescope out of the equation and just using a lens. I understood bare minimum DSLR work. To capture things at night, I need long exposures. It took some trial and error to figure out how to even do that. I had come across the terms aperture and ISO and exposure length, but it's complicated. There's no way around it. I set a timer on the camera, I pointed it straight up, and I took like a 10-second exposure of the sky above me. It wasn't perfectly focused, but I could see the Coma Berenices in it. Now, connecting the story of this ancient asterism, how the constellation Coma Berenices represents the beautiful hair of Queen Berenices of Egypt, who was so concerned for her husband's safety. Her husband was Ptolemy III. He went off to war. She was so concerned that she vowed to cut off her glorious long hair as a sacrifice to Venus should he be spared. And when he eventually returned home safely, she kept her promise, and Zeus placed her beautiful hair up in the heavens to live and shine amongst the stars. Adding that story to the photo made it a great shareable item on different platforms, and it inspired me to continue pushing my skills so that I could share more of this with everyone. So here we are. I've upgraded my gear since then, and I have a decent enough foundational knowledge of the night sky and how to photograph it. I reviewed hundreds of hours of video on YouTube to learn this, and I had come across several gaps in knowledge that other content producers might not have considered. While there is a mountain, and I mean an absolute mountain of beginner astrophotography tips out there, I wanted to make one place for all of it to come together. I also think it would be fun for anyone learning to do so alongside of me. This is definitely not a pro channel, much like scientists studying space. For every one thing that I discover, I unlock 100 other things that I had never even thought of. So I in no way claim to know it all. In fact, I don't know very much at all. But I think that's a great place to be in because it gives you the opportunity to discover with me. So welcome to my channel. I'm gonna break things down. I'm thinking into like 1 or 2 topic episodes, nothing too big, explaining those topics the way that I wish I had them explained to me, the way that I wish I had discovered them, so that hopefully anyone, and I mean anyone, can follow along with me. Stay tuned.